So in our first reading today from the first book of Kings, we see that the prophet Elijah is very discouraged. He is disheartened. He is tired. He is so disheartened and discouraged that he's even asking the Lord for death. We're told he goes under this broom tree and he prays for death to the Lord, saying, "This is enough, O Lord. Take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." He is crushed, he's disheartened, he is sad. And it's particularly interesting that he is this disheartened and sad because immediately preceding this event, Elijah has just had a major victory. He just immediately preceding this event had the famous showdown with the false prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel, where he has just successfully called down the fire from heaven that consumed the sacrifice, and he had demonstrated that the Lord is truly God. And all the people who were around, when they saw this demonstration of the power of the living God through Elijah, had basically begun to proclaim, "The Lord is God, the Lord is God, the Lord is God." And in their zeal, they had basically slaughtered all the false prophets of Baal. But in response to that victory, Jezebel, who's the wife of the evil king Ahab, decided she did not like what Elijah had done. And so she starts coming after Elijah, trying to kill him. Elijah has to flee southbound, and then he goes into the desert because what he's witnessing is this victory that he had just won is undermined by the fact that not everybody who had seen this profound power of the Lord is necessarily converted, including Ahab the king and Jezebel. And so he's disheartened and discouraged, and he's thinking, all that effort, all that effort that I put in to bring people to you, O Lord, and yet they still don't convert. Why am I even doing this? Why don't you just kill me right now? This is so disheartening. This is so discouraging. Despite that major victory, he's disheartened, he's discouraged, and he's tired. My dear brothers and sisters, I think this experience of Elijah is not unlike a lot of the experiences we have as Christians, especially living in the modern world today, right? On the one hand, we'll work very hard to do the right thing. We'll work very hard to bring the kingdom into the world. And sometimes we'll even see victories. And yet sometimes we see those victories sometimes eroded. And when we see that happening, it can be very disheartening, very discouraging. I can give a few concrete examples. If you think about it, just like a year and a half or 2 years ago, we won a major victory in our country. We overturned Roe v. Wade. Those of us who have been in the pro-life movement were praying for years, working hard for years, and finally this victory comes. Roe v. Wade is overturned, this great joy, this relief. I can't believe I'm seeing it in my lifetime. And yet right after that, we see an erosion of that victory, state after state, becoming even more aggressive in the legislation that they're passing towards abortion, even up to birth. Even here in our own state, these movements that are growing. And what is even particularly sad is the major party platforms. One party is aggressively for abortion. The other one is sort of back down on the issue of abortion. And when you see this, you say, why did we do all that work? It can be very discouraging, very disheartening. And the temptation is to be like Elijah and say, Lord, it's a waste of time. Let's just not even do this. It seems we're taking 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. Why are we even doing this? Another example, parents, right? You raise your kids in the faith. You make sacrifices. Some of you even sending them to Catholic schools where you actually have to pay money when you have the option to go to public school. You pay money and sacrifice for them to go to Catholic school, to get a Catholic education. You send them to CCD or faith formation in order that they learn the faith. And after all that effort and that victory, they still lose the faith. And now you have children and grandchildren that don't even pray, that don't even believe. And just like Elijah, you're just like, Lord, why did I sacrifice? Why did I waste my time? Really, Lord, just take it all away. Really, it's a waste of time. Disheartening, tired, discouraged. Or a priest like me. We put in all this effort to preach the gospel. We put in all this effort to go to seminary for 9 years. I went for 9 years, not for 6, 9 years, right? To go there and we study hard. We preach the gospel so that people may come to the Lord. Victory. And then on the side, we hear of these abuse scandals and cover-ups and people leaving the church, and we say, Lord, why am I even wasting my time making this sacrifice? Disheartening, discouraged, tired. Well, my dear brothers and sisters, I think our readings today are basically showing us that in the midst of a world where we're going to be disheartened, where we're going to be discouraged, where we're going to encounter things that poke at our hearts and make us question our faith, we're being reminded today that the Lord himself has provided something that will give us strength, that will keep us persevering. And through that strength, you and I are being given an opportunity to be renewed, to be revived, and to persevere. And what is that we're being given? We're being given Jesus in the most holy Eucharist. And we see this even played out in our first reading, believe it or not. Because as Elijah is lying there on that floor under the broom tree, disheartened, discouraged, tired, an angel taps him on the shoulder and he says, get up and eat. Get up and eat. And Elijah looks up. He sees this mysterious earth cake and a jug of water. He eats, he goes back to sleep. The angel taps him on the shoulder again. Get up and eat, else the journey is too long for you. Get up and eat. Elijah gets up. He eats this mysterious earth cake that the angel provides and water. And then after that, we're told he's able to get strength that he walks for 40 days and 40 nights to the mountain of the Lord, Mount Horeb. And if you remember the story, when he gets to Mount Horeb, that is the place where he encounters the Lord in that powerful way. Not in the wind, not in the fire, but in the still small voice. And that still small voice confirms to Elijah not only his vocation as a prophet, but even shows him the victory that he will have in the fact that he'll even have a successor who will speak on his behalf in the form of Elijah. And so, in a sense, Elijah in the form of Elisha, Elijah is strengthened for his journey by this earthquake. Now, this earthquake and this water is an obvious allusion or a prefiguration to the true bread that comes down from heaven that the Lord is going to provide for us in the Holy Eucharist. And in the gospel today, Jesus reminds us, I am the bread of life. I am the true bread that has come down from heaven. He who eats of my flesh and drinks of my blood will have life within him. I am the living bread that comes down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world. And so, in a very real way, we're being reminded today, in the midst of this discouraging world where things poke at our hearts, Jesus himself has given himself to us as food and drink that not only provides us nourishment, encouragement, consolation on our journey, but food that even lasts to give us eternal life. And he gives of himself to us in the Holy Eucharist, in something that we can put in our mouths, in the body, blood, soul, and divinity. And we have it right here at the Mass. We have it right here at the Mass. And so the invitation today, my dear brothers and sisters, lean in to the Holy Eucharist. Lean into Jesus here at the Mass. Receive him with reverence. Receive him with faith. Receive him with love. Spend time in front of the Lord in the Holy Eucharist. He really wants to console us. He is the only one who can encourage us, who can give us the energy and the strength to continue. He is the one who will illumine meaning in the midst of our vocations, even though we see all these failures, all these discouragements, even though we're going through storms in our lives, even though we have to carry our crosses in our lives, even though sometimes what we do may seem like it's a complete failure. He's the one who brings the light and meaning into those things, but it's essential that we lean in on him. My dear brothers and sisters, I think in a time such as this, when the world, as one priest would say it, has gone completely bonkers, they have lost their way, right? It is far more essential now more than ever that we lean in to this precious gift of the Holy Eucharist. And I think many of us had that experience at COVID. We were separated from our Lord in the Holy Eucharist. And so I think this is just an invitation all the more to take advantage of this precious gift as much as possible. And thanks be to God, you're all here. And I know, of course, there's some who are watching through live stream who are homebound. That is why we come to you. But thanks be to God, we have this precious gift of the Holy Eucharist. It can really console us. Jesus himself is here, body, blood, soul, and divinity. He consoles us. He energizes us. He gives us the strength and the encouragement to keep persevering, to keep doing the right thing. Even when it seems everybody else is going the opposite way, we are given the strength to the Holy Eucharist. Therefore, lean in to Jesus. Lean into the Holy Eucharist. Here at Our Lady of Lourdes, we have gone the extra step. For one, Jesus is always available to us in the tabernacle, and so in as much as you can, the church is always open 7 days a week, most of the day. Come spend time with him in the Eucharist. On Thursdays, we have increased the Eucharistic time throughout the whole time when Jesus is exposed. Spend time with him. Lean into that time. We've also made that decision in light of this Eucharistic revival to reopen the St. Benedette's Chapel, where the hope is that throughout the day there will be an opportunity to encounter Jesus exposed in the Blessed Sacrament, so that he's available for us to encourage us, to console us, to give us that energy, and where we can just pour out our hearts to him and abide in him in a time such as this, when there's so much discouragement, when it's easy for us to be sort of discouraged and to be tired in our journey, or even to compromise. And so there's this beautiful gift of the Holy Eucharist. In closing, I just want to close with a story. If you remember, there's this bishop from Vietnam. His name he's a venerable now, Cardinal Nguyen Van Thuan. Cardinal Nguyen Van Thuan. He himself experienced major persecution in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. He was the bishop of Saigon, and he had to serve many years in an unjustified way in a communist prison. But while he was in that prison, in that place of darkness, what sustained his faith was Jesus in the Holy Eucharist. He would smuggle in tiny little morsels of bread and tiny little vials of wine and water, and then he would basically put a tiny little morsel of bread on his palm, a drop of wine and a drop of water, and he would celebrate the Mass from memory on the palm of his hand, and then he would consume Jesus in the Holy Eucharist from the palm of his hand. And he says the moment he started celebrating Mass in that communist prison, his energy changed. He was encouraged in that prison, so much so that he even became a light in that dark place. It became so bad for the guards that whenever they would send guards to Cardinal Van Thuan, he would convert all of them, to the point that the communists had to keep changing the guards, because all the guards who would come to him trying to be mean to him, he would actually convert them. And he all of a sudden got this illumination. Hey, I'm in prison. I'm like St. Paul. Why don't I write letters to my community just like St. Paul, when he was in prison, wrote all those letters that we now have in the New Testament? And so he started to write these letters to his community in Saigon, and those letters are now compiled in the book that is basically the story or the memoirs of Cardinal Van Thuan. But he basically attributes the fact that he was able to be sustained and to have faith and to have joy and to have encouragement and to have light directly to the Holy Eucharist. And if the Holy Eucharist could sustain a man in that dark place, how much more as you and I live in this world of challenges. And so lean in on the Holy Eucharist. It's a profound gift, and thanks be to God, you and I are here at Mass, abiding in him, receiving him, encountering him. And so, in the midst of a difficult world, in the midst of discouragement and darkness in our world, in the midst of a world that has gone bonkers, may you and I lean in on the gift of the Holy Eucharist, and may we find strength, encouragement, light, and energy to continue being a light in this dark world. Praise be Jesus Christ.